Hey guys, it's Lotus and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to continue on with our read-along of Urha. Let's get started. Chapter 40. This venerable one cannot believe this. What the hell? The weapon inside Ever Yearning was Tianwen, or rather a gold willow vine just like Tianwen, exactly the same in every aspect, from the patterns on the vine to the construction. To Yearning unwittingly breaks the willow branch. Chuaning wore an interesting expression as he handed the willow vine over to Moran, then, light gathering in his palm, called forth Tianwen. The two were as mirror images, not the slightest bit different. No one had anticipated anything like this happening. Even Moran couldn't believe his eyes. As someone who had been on the receiving end of Tianwen for probably about 1,000 times last life, he never would have expected to receive the exact same weapon from Jinchang Lake. What exactly was going on? Everyone's gaze turned collectively toward Gochen the Exalted. Gochen the Exalted seemed surprised as well. There are actually two wood elemental spiritual essences in the world concurrently? Shuemeng asked, What does wood elemental spiritual essence mean anyway? It's like this, Gochen explained. There are 5 elements in the world, as you all know. In cultivating a spiritual core, every person is aligned with 1 or 2 of the elements. The person most innately abundant in a certain element is the spiritual essence of that element. For instance, the Wushan goddess of the past was the spiritual essence of the earth element. However, generally speaking, there can only exist 1 spiritual essence of any particular element in a single generation. And there is currently already a spiritual essence of the wood element, to whom I gifted the first wood elemental weapon many years ago. His gaze landed on Chuaning. When forging the 5 top-tier holy weapons, I originally planned to make only 1 of each element. Everything went as intended for the other 4, but the wood elemental holy weapon broke into 2 pieces inside the forge. I recognized it as the will of the heavens, and so made the 2 halves of the willow vine separately into 2 weapons. But even so, I was certain that these 2 weapons would never find owners at the same time. So I entrusted one to Ji Baihua and his brocade box, as a precaution against any unscrupulous scheming. I would never have expected. Gochen shook his head, and was about to say more when, suddenly, a burst of lustrous red firelight burst forth from the willow vine in Moran's hand as its golden radiance changed gradually into the scarlet of a raging inferno. Moran's thoughts were still in utter disarray, and he blurted out without thinking, What the hell? Chuaning tried to stop him, but was too late. And so, both he and Gochen the Exalted could only gaze at Moran with pity. Moran also quickly realized the reason behind their looks. He remembered. The first time a holy weapon changes its color indicated a recognition of its owner, and a request to be bestowed a name by its new master. Unfortunately, it was already too late. They could only watch helplessly as 3 characters written in exquisite and powerful calligraphy slowly appeared on the silver handle of the willow vine. Oh my gosh! What the hell? Jian Gui. Holy weapon, what the hell? Moran, Although Shuemeng and Shimei didn't know about the practice of naming holy weapons, they put 2 and 2 together easily enough. Shuemeng doubled over with laughter, clutching his stomach with both hands and laughing so hard that he was almost crying. Only you could manage a name like that. Ha 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 ha, good name, good name. Shizun's Tianwen and you're what the hell? Ha ha ha. Since Moran already got a holy weapon, Shuemeng and Shimei also each picked out a weapon they liked. Shuemeng chose a long sword, and Shimei opted for a short flute. Neither of their weapons changed in color, evidently not yet willing to submit to their new masters. But it was no matter. They'd figure something out later, and thus everyone returned to the estate for the evening feast in quite the good mood. Except Moran. Gochen the Exalted had never brought mortals into Jinchang Lake before. He generously invited them to stay the night before leaving, and spared no efforts as a host. The banquet tables were loaded with meat and wine, and energetic drum beats accompanied their merrymaking. Everybody came out a bit tipsy. Afterwards, Go-chen had the chamberlain bring the guests to their rooms to rest. The guest rooms were adjacent to the holy weapon arsenal. Looking at that massive tree, Moran thought of the jian gui that he had just received, and couldn't help calling forth the willow vine to look it over. To yearn unwittingly breaks the willow branch. Just what did that fox spirit Ji Bai Hua know? Why did he say something like that? And what exactly did he mean by those words? He was a little drunk, the alcohol in his system muddling his thoughts, but it just made no sense to him. If ever yearning wasn't broken, then how did Chuaning open it? Of course he didn't like Chuaning. As for Chuaning being deeply in love with him, don't make him laugh. Thinking so, he looked back towards his Shizun. But unexpectedly, Chuaning was also looking at him. Their eyes met, and Moran felt his heart tremble slightly, as if pricked by some tiny, sharp thing, along with a faint, sweet-sour kind of feeling. Without thinking, he was already grinning toothily at Chuaning, but the feeling lasted for only an instant before he was filled with regret instead. He obviously disliked Chuaning, but why was it that he felt so at peace, so warm, when he looked at him sometimes? Chuaning, on the other hand, appeared impassive as always. He saw that Moran had called out Jian Gui, thought for a moment, and also called out Tianwen. He walked towards Moran. Jian Gui seemed to have a bit of a temper, sensing the approach of another strong wood elemental. It crackled with sparks of scarlet firelight, some splashing on Xuanmeng from time to time, as if in a show of aggressive competitiveness. In contrast, although Tianwen also seemed to have sensed the presence of another like itself, it was already habituated to Chuaning's mannerisms from having spent so much time with him, and so, despite also being proudly combative, its golden light did not stir into an agitated frenzy like Jian Gui, but rather brightened gradually, and, seeing that its master did not disapprove, grew dazzlingly brilliant, as if determined to show Jian Gui the steady composure with which an exceptional weapon should greet battle. Two holy weapons, originally one branch. One was fresh and inexperienced, while the other was seasoned through hundreds of battles. One flared with a red light, like an impatient and excitable youngster still wet behind the ears. The other coursed with a golden radiance, like a proud and haughty master standing atop the tallest peak. Chuaning glanced at the willow vine in his hand, with a quiet noise of contemplation. Then his gaze, from beneath thick, lowered lashes, turned to Jian Gui. He spoke, "Moran, Shizun, take up your..." It was a little embarrassing to say Jian Gui, what the hell. Chuaning paused, then said, "Take up your willow vine. Let's have a match." The mush in Moran's brain boiled and bubbled, but he couldn't make heads or tails of it. He pinched the bridge of his nose and forced a smile. "Please don't joke like that, Shizun. Have mercy." "I'll let you have the first 3 moves." "I've never used the willow vine before." 10 moves. "But..." Without wasting any more words, Chuaning flicked his wrist and a flash of dazzling gold cleaved directly toward him. Moran, whose fear of Tianwen was already embedded deeply into his very being, was scared shitless and immediately raised Jian Gui to block. The willow vines split the skies, entwining in midair like a pair of dragons locked in battle, sparks of gold and scarlet flying ceaselessly with the friction. Moran had never studied how to use this unusual weapon before, but he had watched Chuaning's combat style for so long, and combined with his exceptional innate talent, he actually managed to defend against Chuaning's attack, although only just barely. They exchanged several dozen blows in the freezing lake water. Chuaning was holding back, but Moran's performance in holding his own against him was still outstanding and exceeded his expectations. Tianwen's gold and Jian Gui's scarlet danced together, light resplendent in their wake, magnificent to behold. The willow vines ripped through the once calm waters, stirring it to life and tearing it apart, gold and scarlet intertwining, evenly matched, loath to part. Chuaning's gaze was one of praise, but Moran, gasping for breath and utterly exhausted from the fight, didn't notice at all. Chuaning said, Tianwen, return. The golden willow vine that was fierce and unrelenting but a moment ago became immediately pliant, like black ice melting into spring water, glimmering as it returned obediently to Chuaning's palm. Moran's chest heaved as he panted for breath, Jian Gui still crackling with firelight in his grip. His legs gave out after a while, and he fell on his butt right there on the snowy ground, grievance written all over his face. No more! No more! Shizun's bullying me! Chuaning, I let you have 10 moves. Moran whined petulantly. How could 10 moves possibly be enough? 100 would be more like it. Owie, my hand, my arms, they're gonna fall off. Shumei, give me some rubs. How shameless. He blabbered as Xue Meng laughed mockingly, and Shumei tried his best to calm both of them down. Chuaning glanced at them quietly and said no more. In the green waters of the freezing lake, the corners of Chuaning's lips seemed to move slightly, as if in a faint yet warm smile, but there was no way to be sure, and it was only for an instant, and in the next moment he had already turned around, a hand held casually behind his back as he gazed at the enormous tree at the center of the courtyard, with its thousands of drooping branches, thoughts unknowable. That night, Moran sat in a guest room with a soft and clean floor of white sand, the walls painted in aquamarine and enchanted to gleam softly with the rays of light that pierced through the water. The window was half open, the pearl curtain drifting gently in the evening breeze, and on the table was a lamp made of night glow pearl that lit up the room with an easy ambiance. A large seashell sat in the center of the room, its inside lined with layers of soft, fine satin. Moran sank into the bed and called out Jian Gui again, holding it in his hand and staring at it. Perhaps he really was too worn out, but he fell asleep before long, after only having examined it for a little while. Laying on Moran's chest, Jian Gui pulsed with a dim red light, as if following its master into slumber. Moran didn't know how long he had slept for, but when he awoke, the first thing he felt was an icy chill, followed immediately by a burst of searing pain from his wrist. He sucked in a breath and, holding his head, slowly sat up. The strange pain at his wrist grew more distinct as his consciousness returned, and he was startled to discover that a gash had been cut on his wrist, and already scabbed over with congealed blood. What's going on? Where is this? Moran's eyes shot open. Sobering up, he found himself in a dark and completely unfamiliar stone room with only a small ventilation opening in the ceiling. The cold light of the lake came through that opening into the narrow space, barely a few feet wide. The ash-green stone walls, damp and slimy, glistened faintly in the feeble light. Okay, end of chapter 40. So, to recap, Moran and Shizun compared their willow vines, and they found out that they were made from the same branch. And then Moran, being a dumb husky, accidentally named his willow vine Jian Gui, which means what the hell. He never learns, does he? So yeah, now they're just and then also he got to have a little mini combat lesson with Shizun. And Shizun was actually really proud of him for mastering how to use the willow vine so quickly. But unfortunately, Moran didn't notice Shizun's approval. And honestly, that's all he wants, Shizun's approval. So, Moran, you gotta pay more attention, my guy. Okay, but anyway, it looks like when he fell asleep, something happened, and he woke up to be trapped in some type of room. So let's see what happens next. Chapter 41. This venerable one kisses the wrong person again. We're gonna get a kiss? Okay. The stone room had nothing to see, just plain walls on 3 sides and magicked bars on the 4th that coursed with a red light. The only fixture in the room was a crude bed made of stone and covered with straw. There was nothing to do but to lie on the stone bed. His hands and feet were both shackled, the chains clanking with every movement. He was captured. Even worse, something seemed to be suppressing his spiritual powers, and he couldn't invoke any of it. His mind was racing with anxious thoughts when he heard a sudden creaking sound and turned to see 2 merfolk enter. You! Moran growled angrily. You lunatics! What exactly is going on? What do you think you're doing? Where are my Shishang and Shidi? Where's Gochen? Oi! I'm talking to you! But no matter how much Moran yelled or cursed, the merfolk paid him no mind. They were carrying something wrapped in a piece of red fox fur, something human-shaped, which they expressionlessly set down on the stone bed. Moran snarled, You little eels! Quit yapping already. One of them finally spoke, voice filled with contempt. You're a spiritual essence. It won't be a bad deal for you. The other also sneered, more like a pretty sweet deal. Moran was about to spit blood out of rage. What do you want? What did you lock me up here for? And what's on that bed? What's that on the bed? One countered. The person you like, of course, the other said. Moran's fingertips went cold with shock. Shumei? The merfolk did not confirm or deny, only sneering. The spring of youth is such a fleeting thing. Since the two of you are meant to be, we'll let you have this night together. When it's all done and over with, you'll find out what the exalted god went to such trouble for. Tossing these words out, they left. The room was deathly silent. With his hands and feet restrained, Moran couldn't move at all. 1 minute blurred into the next, with no way to tell how much time had passed. He struggled to no avail, until his wrists and ankles were raw and bloody. Panting softly, Moran turned to look at the person next to him, wrapped firmly in the fox fur from head to toe, with only a long strand of ink-black hair visible. He stared at that strand of hair, heart beating erratically with both panic and arousal. Not the time, Moran! It's really not the time! He didn't know why that creep Gochen was doing this, but if this is what he would let him realize his covetous desires with Shumei, his thoughts suddenly grounded to a halt, as if any more would be to profane that beautiful person. Moran stared at the ceiling, breaths heavy and stifled as if there was a weight on his chest. He had longed for this for so long, but now that the chance had come, all he felt was unease. That initial filthy I can't read today, I'm so sorry. That initial filthy excitement slowly faded away as 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind. He gradually calmed down. Whatever it was that Gochen was planning, it could not be good. It'd be one thing if it was only aimed toward himself, but how could he bear it if Shumei got dragged into it also? Besides, this whole situation was by someone else's design. Shumei hadn't agreed to anything at all. Moran may be scum, but he wanted to protect, not hurt, the person he liked. He resolved that no matter what Gochen does, he definitely won't take advantage of Shumei when he wakes up. A long while passed in silence before the person beside him finally moved. Moran hurriedly turned his head that way, voice raspy. The May hadn't even come out before it made a stiff U-turn on the tip of his tongue and went right back in. He swallowed, the jet of his throat bobbing before he finally managed to spit out the second half. Zun? Shizun? Moran's gaze, resolute and filled with chivalrous conviction only a moment ago, faltered as soon as he saw the face that was revealed from underneath the fox fur. All of his mental fortitude fell apart in an instant. The barricades in his chest that he had worked so hard to raise to the ground, turned into rubble amidst a barrage of cracking sounds. All that stuff about protecting, not taking advantage, absolutely no defiling, each one was like a slap in the face, everyone louder than the last. Moran's face turned pale. He could finally say with absolute certainty that every single inhabitant of this Jincheng Lake, even and especially that Gochen, was blind as F. To think that he liked Chuaning? Ugh. First that fox, now these merfolk? He seriously couldn't understand what made them all think that the apple of his eye was Chuaning. Could it be that they somehow figured out that he slept with him before, and still wants to sleep with him even now? Ridiculous! It's not like wanting to bed someone is the same as liking that person. Moran raved on the inside, filled with self-righteous indignation, but couldn't even choke out half a word on the outside, only staring dumbly at that pair of phoenix eyes slowly opened. Oh God. He could almost hear the clunk of something in his head breaking. A second passed, and something seemed to ignite from the wreckage inside his chest, along with a foul stench, black ashes, and a twisted kind of heat. It was scalding hot. Oh my gosh, Moran, it's really not the time. It's so hilarious how he had so much control when he thought it was Shimei. He's like, I will not defile Shimei. I have a lot of self-control. I am not a beast. And then the moment he sees Chuaning, he's about to tear his shirt off. Like, I take all of it back. He really does have the hots for his Shizun. As if a fire-spitting dragon was suddenly soaring through the deathly stillness of this dark night, as if scorching lava and raging flames had suddenly burst out of the silent abyss. All of his premeditated reason and self-control burned up in the roaring blaze. This was the last thing he could have possibly anticipated. Chuaning's usually piercing eyes were hazy with sleep, languid and dazed, like a bamboo forest after the rain, every leaf and sound laden with dew. Judging by that expression, something seemed to be controlling his consciousness. He sat up slowly, the fox fur slipping off a shoulder and revealing large expanses of supple skin, for he was completely naked underneath. But his back and shoulder were covered in bruises, love bites in hues of red and blue. How could this be? Moran felt like he was going crazy. Who did this? Who did these kind of things to his Shizun? He was Chuaning. Every bone in his body was shaking in rage, his blood screaming with hatred. This was Chuaning. Who touched this person who belonged to him? This person was his. Moran was so overcome with hatred that he didn't even stop to consider that Chuaning didn't belong to him at all in this life, didn't belong to anyone. All he saw was Chuaning's firm, well-proportioned body, and those unfamiliar marks on that familiar body. Shizun! His voice was low and twisted, but Chuaning didn't seem to hear his hoarse cry at all. He lowered his lashes and, like a puppet on a string, leaned over Moran, a hand caressing his face as their eyes locked for a moment. Then he closed his eyes and leaned in, those moist lips capturing his own. Rarely had Chuaning ever kissed him first. At the touch, all the fields of his heart dried up. Brilliant, frantic colors exploded before his eyes as his heart beat wildly, feverishly. Chuaning's body was cold, but heat flared up all the same where teeth scraped as their lips met. Moran was still agonized and jealous over him having been debased by another, but couldn't resist being seduced by this familiar man, pained and aroused all at once. Moran was breathing hard when they parted. He opened his eyes, only to see Chuaning's eyes glassy and skin flushed with desire. His blood raced, and he couldn't help wanting to reach up and stroke his face. But he was still bound in chains, unable to move. Chuaning glanced at the shackles but said nothing, instead rising to his knees and moving to straddle him. Moran swallowed hard, throat moving, but then he noticed, between Chuaning's long, shapely legs, an unmistakable stickiness sliding slowly down his thighs with the movement. Moran saw red, his eyes snapping open as he tried to sit up in a jolt, but was pulled back by the chains, slamming heavily back down against the bed. Who? He couldn't bear it anymore, roaring like a caged beast, bereft of all reason. Who the F did this to you? I'll kill him! I'll kill him! He didn't care if it was Gochen the Exalted, or the Heavenly Emperor himself, whether it was a god, demon, ghost, or the effing Buddha. He was Ta Xianjun! Chuaning was Ta Xianjun's! Even if he was trapped in this young body right now, deep in his bones, he was still the emperor of the mortal realm. Who dared touch his Shizun? Who dared touch his person? His, Moe Yu's, Ta Xianjun's person? Moran! Someone seemed to be calling him. But he was engulfed in the flames of rage, senses muddled. He seemed to hear, yet also not. Moran! He'll just have to kill them all. Unforgivable. What was Jian Gui? Where did his spiritual powers go? Why couldn't he summon Jian Gui? He was really about to lose it. Insufferable humiliation. Hateful grudge. Insufferable humiliation. Hateful grudge. Who dared touch Chuaning? In the previous life, he dug out the eyes of anyone who dared to so much as even glance at Yu Hung of the night sky, one or too many times, and made them swallow their own eyeballs. And then at night, he would hold Chuaning under himself and F him until exhaustion. But this life... Mo Wei Yu! Just who was it that was calling him, so persistent? But that voice was really so familiar, as if he had heard it once somewhere before. No, that's not it. It was as if he had heard it all the time before, everywhere, as if the owner of that voice had kept him company through the years. Mo Wei Yu, wake up already. Have you lost your mind? What are you doing? Moran's eyes flew open. He followed the voice to see pristine robes white as snow outside the cell, a pair of sharp eyes on an expression written with worry, brows tense and drawn together with an aura of killing intent. It was none other than Chuaning. Shizun, Moran paled. Then, on the bed, he whipped his head around and nearly got scared to death by that face mere inches from his own. This wasn't Chuaning at all. It was clearly a dead monster with a human body, but a fox face. The dead part wasn't an embellishment. Dead, as in literally dead. The thing pressed against him, that was passionately making out with him just a moment ago, really was a dead thing. The fox monster's eyes were empty, its skin pallid, not a hint of life. Moran almost retched thinking about how he was just kissing that thing while entranced by some illusion, his face an interesting color. What's happening? Outside the cell, Chuaning held a cursed talisman between two fingers. Seeing as the fox monster was no longer moving, Moran guessed that he had probably used a spell to rip the talisman from the fox corpse in the nick of time. He evoked his spiritual energy, and a stream of dark red blood bubbled forth from the talisman, along with blood-curdling shrieks as the paper burned into ashes. Chuaning opened his hand, the scorched ashes slowly gathering in his palm and forming into a jet-black chess piece. He stared at that chess piece, expression troubled. It really is Zhenlong chess formation, Chuaning muttered, before suddenly looking up and pinning Moran with his gaze. What food does Xi Mingjing usually make for you when you're sick? Say it. Too much had happened in too short a span of time. Moran's head was in complete disarray. He could only say dumbly, What are you asking about that for? Chuaning said harshly, Just say it. Oh, wontons? Only then did Chuaning's expression relax slightly, but his brows were still furrowed as he spoke. Moran, listen closely. That Gochen is an impostor, not the actual god of weaponry. This person is adept at illusions, and knows Zhenlong chess formation, one of the 3 forbidden techniques. That's why I had to be careful, in case you were one of his illusions, too. Moran was about to cry from indignation. Why would I be tied up if I was an illusion? Chuaning, I'll get you out of there right away. Nodding frantically, Moran asked, Oh yeah, Shizun, what about Shimei and Shuemeng? Same as you. They also succumbed to the drugs and the wine, and got locked up elsewhere. Seeing Moran's expression, Chuaning added, No need to worry. They're fine now. It's just that there was no way to tell what kind of dangers laid in wait here, so I had them wait outside. You'll be able to see them once we get out of here. As for the Zhenlong chess formation, Chuaning did not explain further, nor did he need to. It was one of the 3 powerful and notorious forbidden techniques of the cultivation world. As the name implies, Zhenlong chess formation is a technique that uses others as chess pieces, to be maneuvered at will like in a game of chess. The user typically doesn't appear in person at the battlefield, but rather lays down a chessboard and manipulates the chess pieces from the shadows, forcing everything from living people to the ghosts of the departed, from beasts on the land to birds from the skies, to be at their every beck and call. A living creature under the control of Zhenlong chess piece, Zhenlong chess formation is loyal to the user until death, and a dead creature will do their bidding until torn limb from limb. However, what the user could control depended on their spiritual strength. Newly deceased people and beasts were the easiest to control, followed by those long dead, then live beasts, and finally, cultivated to the highest level, it allowed the user to control living people. Very few people in the world were even capable of achieving this highest tier of Zhenlong chess formation, but when Moran named himself emperor, he had already perfected the technique. That year, when he faced off against Chuaning in a death match, he laid down a scroll 100 feet long, a chessboard of splashed ink, an army of strewn pieces. In that battle, hundreds of thousands of chess pieces touched down simultaneously, winged beasts blotted out the golden sky, and dragons burst out of the raging seas. Moran summoned endless beasts of both land and sky, and commanded an army of countless living people. A scene like that would be a rare sight even in hell. This fox corpse was obviously something controlled by Zhenlong chess formation, with an additional layer of illusion magic alongside. Rumor had it that the fur of the Qinchu fox clan's earliest ancestor was divided into 49 pieces of various sizes and made into magic artifacts. If one were to take someone's blood and drip it onto the fox fur, and then wrap that fur around something, anything at all, even a block of rotten wood would take on the appearance of that person's heart's desire. The fur wrapped around this fox corpse was one such artifact. However, the magic only worked on the original owner of the blood. To anyone else, it looked as it always had. It was a simple task to free Moran. By the time Chuaning got him out of there, he had also more or less finished explaining everything to him. What Moran couldn't figure out was, Shizun, how did you know that Gochen was a fake? Okay, end of chapter 42. 41. End of chapter 41. So, after Moran woke up and realized that he was captured and chained down, he suddenly was graced with the presence of a naked Chuaning. And he saw that the Chuaning had bruises and looked like he had been debauched completely. And Moran finally realized that he had an obsessive nature towards his Shizun. He was like, this is my person. So at least Moran doesn't have his priorities straight because he was captured, but you know, at least he has his desires straight, right? But then right before they were about to get it on, Chuaning, the real Chuaning, was able to come and destroy the talisman and free Moran. And now Moran is really confused because he's like, I'm pretty sure I'm in love with Shimei. So why did I fantasize about Chuaning? Why did I get so heated and worked up over him? I don't know, Moran. You tell me. You tell me, you dumb husky. But yeah, anyway, so now they realize that Gochen the Exalted is up to no good. He's actually an imposter and not the real weaponry god of weaponry. What's his name? I don't remember. He's a fake, and he's trying to utilize the chess formation, the Zhenlong chess formation, to control living and dead beings, and that's probably why he wanted to extract Moran's spiritual essence. I'm pretty sure he wanted to trick Moran and steal his powers. Yeah. So good thing Shizun already had suspicions about Gochen the Exalted and was able to save all his disciples. Yeah. So I'm assuming in the next chapter they'll finally be able to escape and confront the imposter. But you'll have to find out in the next read-along. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's reading, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!